And as long as your content is authentic, when you speak from heart, and it's not just, like you rightly said, educational and not just salesy, I would definitely connect to any educational piece like that.
If you really want your content to drive traffic or drive connections and help you network, you need to start engaging on other people's posts.
Welcome to Digital Dialogues, the podcast where we decode everything about digital marketing and content creation. I'm your host, Namita Ramani, and with me is my co-host and our content marketing queen, Reim El Houni.
And I'm super excited today because we're discussing a topic that I'm really passionate about. Steven Bartlett recently said that content creation is the new networking. I'm big on content creation. I'm big on networking. Can content creation replace my networking? Namita, that is the topic today. What do you think?
Well, I must confess that I am a very bad networker. I get intimidated by networking. I don't like going to networking events, and I sometimes wonder, oh my God, how do I go and meet someone?
So it's really interesting that you say that because I never used to like networking either. I think deep down, I've always felt like an introvert. But I felt when I started my business, I felt like I had to. There was like a need. It was like, I need to start getting out there. And I ended up becoming, a member of BNI, and that took over a lot of my life. But it also taught me a lot of skills on how to, just be more comfortable and approach people. So I think,
and be approachable. I think it's both, right?
Actually, interestingly, a lot of people don't think I'm approachable. So I still get that feedback. Yeah, so I think it's one of those like your resting face situation. I get a lot of people like, not that approachable. But I think if you have that confidence to like set yourself a goal and be like, you know what, I'm attending this event. I need to meet at least 5 new people, do what you can. At the end of the day, that's going to help you position your business. But what I found really interesting is when COVID came. I don't know about you. What did you do differently when COVID came, when it came to networking and getting out there?
Actually, surprisingly, at that time, I was part of one of the networks. And Phil, I was part of his network. And I was just amazed by the power of the group. We launched a digital marketing training for 14 days, which helped us as a company to sail out of the problem of COVID. All of us got paid. And all that happened because the network supported in sending the messages and promoting our event as well. So a big power to networking groups.
You see, but that ultimately still happened online, right? So
all digital. Nobody met.
So I wanted to share a really interesting story. I think many people are aware of the STEP conference. And I remember during COVID, none of us had been networking, and STEP conference is one of those events in the annual calendar where everyone goes to STEP conference.
Yes.
So I was really curious and wanting to learn, and I thought, I'm going to attend the virtual STEP conference. So I signed up, and I think it was one of the first virtual events that I did. And they were using a software called Hopin. Mm-hmm. And what I remember is, I know a lot of events have, the virtual stage and the virtual exhibition, and you log on and you see the screen. What they had was the virtual networking room. And I thought, okay, how's this going to work? And I logged in. And before I knew it, a screen popped up in front of me. I was sitting at home in my bedroom. The screen popped up and there was someone else sitting at home. And I was now talking to a stranger. And, it was the equivalent of speed networking happening online. And we had a timer, and we were chatting and getting to know each other's businesses. And our LinkedIn profiles were just above. So if we wanted to connect with that person, we could. And once the timer ended, before I knew it, that person's screen shifted and a new person popped up in front of me.
Wow.
Imagine you're sitting in your bedroom.
That's actually much more fun and easy because you don't have to approach people. It's like happening automatically.
Interestingly, I remember walking out and going to my flatmate and saying, you won't believe what just happened for the last hour. And she's like, well, I've just met like 15 strangers in my bedroom on my screen. And it was such a novel thing, but it really showed the possibilities of how online networking has evolved. And I think because of COVID, using all these digital tools has made things just normalize them a bit more. Have you felt that shift?
Absolutely. Even the meetings generally now, usually in this region, there was a trend of going and meeting people in person. Having a Zoom meeting before we actually decide to proceed has become a norm, which is so much better.
Yeah.
Saves so much of time.
But I think the other thing is that for the introverts out there, I do think that the ability to network from home, through a screen, find these alternative routes has made a difference. But what strikes me, coming back to the initial quote, when Steven Bartlett says content creation is the new networking, when I heard him say that, he mentioned that he still goes to a physical event. He may speak at an event, but he will rush back to his LinkedIn and rush back to his laptop because he can see how content creation on those platforms is actually giving him a much greater result than the time he may spend at a networking event. What do you think about that?
That's something different. Like, say you're at an event, you're not meeting people, but then they're sending you all these invitations on LinkedIn. But then when do you talk? When do you connect?
So, but that's the thing. It's about the amount of time you spend on the platform. So I know that I create content consistently. So I post content every single day. And, out of that content, it has a longer lifespan. So just because it's out there, you're able to attract people. People see it at all times of the day, different hours, and you just never know who's watching and when it's going to have that impact versus that one-time effect or that one-time usage in a specific event. So I can see how my content creation has a much longer mileage than any physical time I may spend at an event.
But can you elaborate more on how content creation is becoming a networking opportunity? How are you connecting with people there?
So I think what happens, especially like I use LinkedIn a lot, but I know it's true of other platforms as well, is that how you engage with other people's content. So if you really want your content to drive traffic or drive connections and help you network, you need to start engaging on other people's posts. So if I was to post a piece of content, I will dedicate some time to finding other creators, other leaders, other people who inspire me, and actually actively comment and engage on those posts. The more frequently you do it, I think it's a habit. If someone's consistently engaging on your content, you're going to go look at their page. You're going to try and figure out, who is this person who's constantly liking my page and contributing? True. So gradually you start building these silent relationships which are based on you liking and commenting each other's content, until one day one of you thinks, oh, there's a lot of synergy here. Let me DM the other individual.
Yeah.
And I've seen this happen to me a few times. So, I'll mention a few names. Ahmed Khaled, he's like a really popular, he's now a LinkedIn influencer, and he has his own podcast. And I didn't know him. But all I knew is I quite liked his content. It resonated with me. My content seemed to resonate with him. And I would say for a good few months, this guy who I just knew on LinkedIn was liking my content, and every now and then he'd comment. And then I thought, that's polite. I'm going to like and comment on his content. And after a few months, I got a DM message from him, and he just said, I really enjoy your content. I have a podcast. I'd love to invite you on the podcast. I was really flattered. I was like, oh, that's really kind. I'd love to join you on your podcast. Next thing I know, I'm a guest on his podcast. Nice guy. We got on really well. And then we found other things to collaborate on. We then did an event together. We're now working on some, packages together in the personal branding space. And it's just fascinating to me when I look at that relationship, because it started through LinkedIn engagement. It started online. So it's an online relationship that has now evolved into the offline space. And I'm seeing more and more examples like that.
So what kind of content do you create then? Can you share some examples of the kind of content you post?
So I still believe, when you're in a journey of trying to attract a new audience, I still think the content needs to be valuable. It needs to be educational, but it also needs to be concise. Because if someone is seeing your content for the very first time, they don't have time to sit there and really get to know you and really understand all the do's and don'ts and what the best ways are to utilize your service. It needs to be educational for them. Mm-hmm. So how can you give them something valuable? I would say in under a minute. I produce a lot of videos, so in video, under a minute. And the reason, any guesses what the average viewer retention is?
10 seconds, 15 seconds.
So it's usually around scrolling on any platform is like 3 to 4 seconds. I think you mentioned it previously, the thumbs
3
up,
seconds,
right?
the thumbs
So 3
up.
seconds for someone to stop. But typically 45 seconds is the average attention span of a video.
Okay.
So if someone sends you a video, if you're like me, the first thing I look at is the duration. The first thing. And I just think, do I have time to watch this? And if it's under a minute, I'm like, okay, I'll watch this. If it's over a minute, I don't have time. I don't have time. So in the online networking space, if you're trying to attract a new audience, you don't want to give them that objection. You want to keep it concise. You want to keep it under a minute, which is why even like podcasts like this, you'll see, you know, us included, we'll have teasers that get put out there, and the teasers are under a minute because the teasers is what kind of attracts someone in.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they enjoy the teaser enough that they're in your funnel and they're going to subscribe and they're going to watch the longer form content.
I absolutely agree. Content definitely builds trust. You start attaching credibility. And as long as your content is authentic, when you speak from heart, and it's not just, like you rightly said, educational and not just salesy, I would definitely connect to any educational piece like that. So, Reem, where do you see the content impacting offline when you're producing all this online content and connecting? How does it take you offline and giving you business?
So it's really fascinating because you never know who's consuming your content. You know, you're creating it, you're putting it out there. And also, you know, something that I always tell people is not to worry so much about the likes and the comments and the engagement. Forget those numbers. It's like, what is your ultimate objective for creating content?
What if there's 0 like and 0 comment?
So what I would say is like, what is the objective of your content? So for example, you know, if my objective is a sale and, you know, I'm talking about getting in front of a camera, not everyone wants to publicly admit that they don't like getting in front of a camera. So
True.
I may get a DM. You know, has it ever happened to you that you've had like 0 posts, 0 engagement, 0 likes, but then you still get a DM and you still get an opportunity?
All the time.
All the time,
Yes.
right? So I genuinely think it's because, you know, if you look at your own behavior, you don't like and comment on everything. You don't necessarily want to show that you're liking certain types of content.
I myself actually go and DM people. I don't leave a comment in the general video.
Exactly.
I do that as
So
well.
I think we need to stop expecting the public side of things and realize that most of the activity happens in private. So again, it comes down to like, what is your objective? If your objective is a sale, if you get that sale through direct message, your content is successful, even if it has 0 likes and 0 comments.
I absolutely agree. And I also feel when you create this amazing content online, apart from business, it also builds your name in the market. So when I hire, for instance, when it helps a lot because most of the people who want to work with us have consumed our podcast somewhere. In fact, during the interview process, they mention, "Oh, I saw your podcast." And that gives them a little bit of edge because they've taken time, invested time to know about the company, know about me and about our culture and stuff. So I think producing content, apart from business, it has tons of intangible benefits that you can't even count on.
I think on the recruitment side, I mean, we were working with a dentist and he sent one of his team members across, and he clearly said to us that of all the practices out there he could have joined, he chose that specific dentist because he was watching his videos on social media. So it's that visibility that it gave the practice that made him feel like this is an established place that I want to be part of.
Yeah.
So it does a credibility shift in people's minds as
Absolutely.
well. Have you ever been in a situation where you're out there networking and someone just approaches you?
So many times, and I feel so bad because I don't know, I have not seen their content, but they have read or seen or watched my video, and then I feel lost. But then they take care of it because they talk about the podcast they saw and stuff like that.
It's funny because I remember the first time that happened to me, I was in a mall and this lady walked up to me and she's like, "Oh, you're Reem." And I was like,
Oh my God,
and
you know my name.
In that moment, I was like, how do I know her? How do I know her? How do I know her? And then I just realized, I don't, you know, and it was like, I don't know you. And she's like, "Oh, but I've been watching your videos and I want to," and that to me was amazing because it's, again, you just never realize that the impact. But other than strangers, I was once in a networking event. And I found this really interesting because a lot of people, again, on LinkedIn will know like Hussein Wahbi, very popular LinkedIn influencer. Didn't really know him personally, just like most people, I watch his content. He came up to me at a networking event. And I was like, "Oh, I really like your videos."
Wow.
And I just went, "I really like your videos." And it just, again, it just goes to show everyone from, you know, whether they're a LinkedIn personality, they're a CEO, they could be a potential teammate. You just never know who's watching. Which I believe means that the more content you create, you know, the wider the reach versus the traditional networking efforts of like going into a room.
So how does this content creation also help us stay connected with the people we already know?
I think that's probably one of the most interesting areas because I mean, if you think about your network, Can you honestly say your friends, your family, they really understand what you do?
No.
Can you honestly say that your friends and family know what you do?
They say they do sometimes, but probably not.
So I think one of the biggest learnings I've had in the last year is that we assume, on LinkedIn, or not just, I say LinkedIn because I use it predominantly, but we're attracting a new audience. But sometimes it's your existing contacts that need to be reminded. They need to see you till they finally understand what you do, so that they're in a position to refer you or work with you. In this last year alone, I've had someone reconnect with me after 18 years. 18?
Wow.
I've had another person reconnect after 15 and another one after 11. And all three, their original DM sounded like, I'm working on this project and I can see from your LinkedIn that you're currently doing XYZ. Would you be able to work with us? To me, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that you have all these dormant connections, or at least you think they're dormant, but actually they're still consuming what you put out there.
Absolutely. And this applies to business leads as well. There are so many leads which are like dormant. They take time to get materialized. And this happens when I share a lot of videos and I share a lot of things on my email database, where you direct people through email to your LinkedIn content, or wherever the videos are hosted, or wherever you're producing content for whichever channel. And I suddenly see this one lead from years before finally getting ready to do business with us.
But that's an interesting point, because I know, you've done a podcast series before. I know, that's something you've been working on. And that was how long ago? 3 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Mm-hmm. So have you seen results from that? What are the results from you putting that content out there?
Amazing, intangible results. So apart from getting great ranking on searches and ranking for the keywords that the podcast is about, the 3 years ago podcast was called Successful Marketing for Small Businesses in Dubai, where I interviewed business owners and shared their story of how they got to where they got. So even when their names are searched, the podcast pops up. So I get a lot of mileage from their name as well and their brand. Again, like I said, for recruitment, it helps a lot, but most of the people who want to work with us have already seen our videos, and they actually are so excited to come and join our team because they want to be part of that culture. So intangible benefits. Potential clients who want to work with us, we also share with them our podcast links, and that gives them more trust and more back to credibility. So I think sums up to that.
I wonder actually whether it's worth, just as a suggestion, you revisiting those podcasts, and even now, like taking the highlights of those conversations and almost giving it a second life, because
already started doing that on our Instagram, kind of taking out snippets and pieces and resharing them in small pieces.
Because I think, also the churn of your audience changes. You've got new people who probably have started following you since then, or you've connected with since then, who weren't around for the podcast, so it's giving them that education and almost repurposing what you've done. It takes a lot of effort to produce content.
Absolutely. And you should milk it as much as you can. And that's the beauty of content marketing, I guess, that whatever content you produce, you can reuse it for years to come.
So what are some of the ways that you've reused or reshared some of the content that you've created in the past?
So we can reuse the content in multiple ways, wherein share it on the newsletter, repurpose the blog, put it on the website, reshare and cut snippets of it and reshare it on your Instagram and as your reels, as your stories, reshare it on LinkedIn in different pieces. So you can basically repurpose the content every way possible you can, or you would like to. Sometimes we also transcript the video and put this as a text format below the video in the blog article so that the search engines can also read it. And again, gives us the backlinks and stuff to get better SEO for those keywords.
So I think coming back to the point about, content creation being the new networking, I don't see how you can get the same reach. It's like if you create one piece of content, we've discussed repurposing it in multiple ways, but not just that. Once you repurpose and you utilize all the different possible social platforms, you've actually got different audiences on each of them. So that really increases the mileage.
Spreads the reach, yeah.
And I know we're both very passionate about email marketing as well. So I think that content then has a second life when you actually try and focus on your existing customers and databases and getting the content out.
All content should be used on email again. Everything should be repurposed on email. I would not leave any piece without email.
So what have been your key takeaways from our discussion today?
I think content really wins, Reem, for networking. In fact, I want to compliment your style of content, because whenever I see your post and the way you connect every single message with your past or some story related to your present or past, it makes me already know you. Like, even if now I know you, but even if I didn't know you, I would know you. And then we don't talk every day. We by the way, talk in a month or something. But just reading your messages makes me, I know you every day now, and everything that's happening to you in your life.
You see, that's amazing, because I often get told I write really long messages, but clearly
I love
makes
them.
a difference.
Absolutely. And I make sure I read them all and then I heart them.
Amazing. Thank you, Namita. I would say for me, that's a really interesting takeaway, because obviously the more personal you can get in the content that you're putting out there, that's what also gives people the comfort level to approach you in public and feel like they know you and start building those relationships. So I think that is a key one.
That's a key one.
I've really enjoyed today's session.
Same here. I've enjoyed it as well.
Outstanding. And if you're someone who's enjoyed this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Make sure you subscribe, tune in, because we've got plenty more exciting conversations coming up on Digital Dialogues.